Attention sports teams. Let us introduce you to the best fan engagement tool in the game, .vote. By getting a .vote web address for your team, you can allow fans to engage and interact with big-time decisions. In a single click, not only can fans make their opinions heard, but sports teams get a better understanding of their fans' interests. Keep your fans engaged. Simply visit GoDaddy.com today, type in the desired name of your web address, and let the voting begin.
It's already week 4 in the NFL, and the baseball playoffs are almost here. What team is best positioned to win it all this year? It might surprise you. We break it down right now on Gordon Damer on Sports. Welcome in. This is a fresh episode of Gordon Damer on Sports. A lot to get into with a major sports weekend. We will get into everything with the football, with week 4 already underway. You got the Ryder Cup going on, all the college football. It really is the best time of the sports calendar. And we'll talk with Ryan Boman, who is a contributing writer for SI.com, who covers the Seattle Mariners, about a topic that I wanted to focus on for the start of the podcast today, and that is with the baseball. The playoffs right around the corner, and while the playoff field, as I record this, is still not set fully, there's one story that feels like it's not getting nearly enough attention. It's gotten some attention for a player, but not on enough, to me, on the team. You know, for nearly a half a century, the Mariners have been Major League Baseball's kind of unsolved puzzle. It's a franchise that's produced some of the most dazzling and incredible individual talents that the game has ever seen, right? They've had Ken Griffey Jr., a clear-cut first-ballot Hall of Famer who was the face of baseball in the 90s. They've had Randy Johnson, maybe the most dominant pitcher in the history of the game. They've had Ichiro Suzuki, who is a cultural icon, came over from Japan and immediately started setting records. But you know, with all that individual talent, with all those transcendent players, the Mariners still carry what you'd have to say is the single most embarrassing distinction of any Major League Baseball team. They are the only active franchise to have never reached a World Series. Think about that. It's not like this team has never had any good players or any good teams. But despite all those legends, all those good teams in the history of the franchise, they've never gotten to the biggest stage, even when the Mariners seemed unbeatable. You might remember back in 2001, the Mariners tied the Major League Baseball record, 116 regular season wins. Think about that, 116 out of 162. That number, you would think, right, would guarantee you an appearance, at least an appearance in the World Series, if not a World Series title. And yet, of course, we probably all know what happened. They lost in the ALCS to the Yankees in 5 games. The Yankees, a dynasty at the time, kind of snuffed out any hopes that the Mariners had of finally putting that record to bed. 116 wins, a rookie Ichiro winning MVP, and a team that during the regular season and on paper looked like it was unstoppable. But yet there's no payoff at the end of the road. So that's been the story of the Mariners. They've had some talent, they've had some hope, but they've had even more heartbreak. And recently, they have been a franchise that it's been close but no cigar. From that 2001 team, for basically the 2 decades after that, they lived in baseball exile. From 2002 to 2021, the Mariners missed the playoffs every single year, even as the field expanded. That's 20 straight years, the longest postseason drought in North American pro sports at the time. Now, when they finally broke through a couple of years ago, 2022, it felt like something bigger was coming. That year, they won 90 games, they clinched a wild card spot, and they shocked the Blue Jays in Toronto, came back from a 7-1 deficit to win a series-clinching game. You think, boy, that gives you momentum. And it looked like the Mariners had finally arrived. Problem was, next round, it was Houston. Division series against the Astros. Seattle was 1 out away from stealing Game 1 in Houston. They had a 2-run lead. and then Yordan Alvarez crushes a 3-run home run off Robbie Ray, and the Astros stole that game. And if you believe in momentum, they stole the momentum. Game 3, Seattle, for them, it was even crueler. 18 innings, scoreless into the 18th before the Astros finally scratched across a run and the Mariners were swept in the series. A historic drought was technically over, but that heartbreak, in some ways, it was even worse. And in the years that have followed, it's been almost crueler in some ways. 2023, Mariners won 88 games, not enough to make the playoffs. In 2024, they won 85, close again, but not enough. In 3 of the last 4 years before this one, they finished second in the division, and twice they missed the playoffs by a single game. Think about that. In the course of 162, you missed the playoffs in back-to-back years by a single game. You could have been part of the tournament, and yet you miss out by the narrowest of margins. And it feels like year after year, you're just kind of waiting for the bad news to come if you're a Mariner fan. It feels like this team has been knocking on the door for a while now, but they've never been able to push across and break that barrier. But this year, 2025, feels different, right? Like the Mariners are not just sneaking into the playoffs this year. They're not just sneaking into the postseason. They're not trying to just manage a wild card. They've done something they have not done since that 2001 team. They have won the American League West, which in this day and age, because of the way the playoffs are drawn up, division titles don't seem like they matter that much anymore. But the way the Mariners did it, it does, because they took it from the Astros, who have owned that division for basically a decade. You know, the Astros had been the gatekeepers of not just the American League, but certainly the AL West. They had been blocking Seattle's path every step of the way, and Seattle was finally able to slay that dragon. So this team is not just good. The Mariners, really my main point here is, I think they have the most complete roster in Major League Baseball. Obviously, the headline is Cal Raleigh with what he's done this year. 60 home runs and counting. He has had a season for the ages. Anytime you're on a list with Babe Ruth, Roger Maris, and Aaron Judge, that's pretty good company. Those are the only guys, along with Cal Raleigh now, who have hit 60 home runs in the American League. So Raleigh is doing something as a catcher no one has ever done before. And this is a guy who is not an all-star lock. He's been a good player, but never at this level. And now he has put up the most historic offensive season at his position in the history of baseball. But, you know, it seems like the coverage has been just about him. This team is deeper than that. This team is balanced. They can beat you with power. They can beat you with the run game. They're second in the league in weighted runs created plus, just behind the Yankees. They're one of the few teams to rank in the top 5 in both home runs and stolen bases. They got aggressive at the trade deadline, adding Josh Naylor and Eugenio Suarez to give them some extra pop and some stability to a lineup. They got Julio Rodriguez and Randy Arozarena in the outfield. So you have a lineup that's got both star power and some depth. They don't really have a weakness in that lineup. So this is not the same old Mariners team that's lived and died with a couple of superstars. This is a roster that can beat you in multiple ways. Now, people might look at their pitching, and they've got the names, but the numbers don't match up to what you would expect for that pitching staff. And the starters have not been as dominant maybe as advertised. And that is true. This season, over the course of the year, the numbers are not that eye-popping. But when you zoom in September, which you would think is the month that matters more than any other, you take a look at what the numbers tell you, and it's something different. Luis Castillo has been pitching his best baseball of the year, pitching to an ERA of 2.45 down the stretch. Logan Gilbert has been even better, an ERA just over 2. And behind them, they got George Kirby, who has the kind of stuff that can certainly shut down any lineup in October. They have high leverage starting pitching. And, you know, a lot of teams get to the playoffs and they're kind of unsure who might match up in that third game or a fourth game or where exactly. Seattle has none of those issues. They know exactly who their guys are. Castillo, Gilbert, Kirby, and if Brian Wu is healthy, that's another weapon, another high strikeout guy who throws gas. So this is not a rotation built on reputation. They can put the names, and they've had some recent dominance. And I also think another thing that's important is something, you know, you have to lose to know how to win. And this year, slaying the Astros the way they did and dethroning Houston is something that cannot be understated. You know, for 8 years, the Astros have been the kings of the AL West, really been kings of the American League. Every year division titles, every year deep playoff runs, World Series titles, and the Mariners have kind of been that little brother stuck in the shadows, and that changed this September. That series where Seattle goes into Houston, where the division is still up for grabs, and you've got to finally produce and show that you are the team now. They dominated. They led for 26 of the 27 innings. They swept the Astros aside, and that balance of power in the AL West has clearly shifted. The Astros are no longer the Astros, and the Mariners are the new team there. And I think there's something psychological to finally get over that hump for the team that has tormented you. That's momentum. And it not just to beat them, to dominate them in the way that the Mariners did. You can understand why Mariner fans feel like this is different. This is not just the same old Mariners team. Another big part of why they think they have an edge come October, their home field advantage. You know, home field advantage sometimes in baseball is overrated. It doesn't really matter as much as it does maybe in other sports. Seattle this year, it has mattered. Now, I don't know what will happen in October, but at least up until this point, as we're talking right now, Mariners 50-27 at home. That's not just good. That's elite. That is how you get it done. They've not just been hot down the stretch, but they have been hot down the stretch. They've done it all year, but in the last 25 games, they've won 22 of their last 25 at home. That's the best stretch in franchise history. So the crowd in Seattle, the Mariner fan, has been starved, basically, for any kind of success in October. And it looks they have reason to believe this year. Again, October is different. There's nothing you can possibly do to guarantee success, but when you combine the atmosphere with the numbers, it feels like Seattle has a legitimate edge. They score more at home, they're better pitching at home, and if they lock up one of those top 2 seeds, where it certainly seems like they're going to, they have a major advantage that they don't have to worry about, and that division series would be at home. So, look, the reality check would be this. Baseball postseason is chaos, right? It's randomness on steroids. So the Mariners know it well. They can have a team that wins 116 games, and it doesn't matter. You have to perform when the lights are the brightest. We've seen wild card teams go on championship runs and make it to the World Series. You've seen division winners flame out right away. October is impossible to predict. There is no blueprint for what you have to do in the regular season that guarantees you anything come the playoffs. You can have the best record, you can have the best pitching, and if you have a bad week, a couple of bad breaks here and there, your series and your season can end fast. So maybe this will be another year where the Mariners run into a buzzsaw of playoff randomness. That is a possibility. Maybe they'll get bounced early. That possibility always exists. And the fact that they're this hot, I don't like the fact that they're this hot, right? It feels like you're just tempting fate being this hot. But there's a flip side. If you were to write a storybook about a baseball season, this is the way you'd write it, right? You'd give the team that you're writing about a superstar who's having this unprecedented season. You'd give them a rotation that's peaking at the right time. You'd give them a balanced lineup, really with no weaknesses between starters, the rotation, the bullpen, the defense, all the different things you have. You'd have them take down the hated rival in the Astros, and you'd give them home field advantage, a home field advantage that's been as strong as any in baseball. That's what Seattle has going for them right now. Maybe it'll mean nothing, but they've waited 49 years for a World Series appearance. They've endured basically 2 decades of frustration since their last division title, and they've lived with the heartbreak of near miss after near miss after near miss. So all of that has led to here, as Aaron Boone would say, it's all right in front of them, and it's right here for this team. So the Mariners might finally be ready to do the one thing they've never done before, reach the World Series. And if they get there, they might end up winning the whole thing. And they might finally put to bed one of the worst stats or facts that you could have about your franchise. The only one in the entire sport who has not gotten to a World Series. The Mariners have the most complete team heading into the October postseason, and maybe this is finally the year it all lines up for the Mariners. All right, now time to talk with Ryan Boman. He is a contributing writer to SI.com on the Seattle Mariners and is nice enough to give us a few minutes today. Ryan, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to this. It's great to talk to you, Gordon.
Yeah, well, look, the Mariners, we were wondering for a while if they were ever going to finally break through after the last couple of years, missing out on the playoffs by a single game. Safe to say they have broken through, huh?
Yeah, September has been very, very good to Seattle, and it's just again, it's been kind of like a storybook finish to the year with Cal Raleigh chasing the American League record in home runs. At the same time, the team goes on this ridiculous 15 out of 16 games tear, and it's almost like been a storybook ending to the regular season. But the real storybook for Seattle will be to win their first World Series this year.
Yeah, the only team that has not reached a World Series. I mean, after August, it seemed like they were kind of fading once again. What has changed here in September, do you think?
Well, outside of Raleigh and Rodriguez, now the rest of the team's picking up around him. They've not gotten the production from Eugenio Suarez, Sanchez that I thought that was Suarez. I'm mixing up names here. They have not gotten the kind of power and the run production that they thought they'd get from him. But you see every night it's another guy, and that's what's a sign of most really great teams is everybody pulls the rope. So it might be a Rosarina one night, or it might be this guy breaks out of an 0 for 12 slump and hits the game-winning double. It's really been a team effort. I know so much national attention is focused on Raleigh, but I mean this is just a good team up and down. And when they're hitting, this lineup can rack up 7, 8, 9 runs a game like it's nothing.
Yeah, being out in Seattle, a lot of times, especially back here on the East Coast, people kind of don't really pay that much attention because it's so far away. And I think the general perception about the Mariners is, boy, they can pitch, but the offense may not be able to score. No, they're an offensive team. They can hit home runs, they can steal bases, they can kind of do everything. I was talking about it, and I think they're kind of the most complete team, certainly in the American League. Might be the most complete team in baseball, and you could not be better set up to succeed in October than they are right now.
Absolutely. They only have one more hurdle, and that's to win, say, 2 out of 3 in this series against the Dodgers to close out the season. And, hey, next thing you know, they might be the number 1 seed in the American League. They're only 1 game behind the number 1 seed. So, it stands to reason that if they, knock on wood, sweep the Dodgers, they could very well be the top seed. And of course, they've already clinched home field. They don't have to play in the wild card round. So, I mean, they've literally rolled out a teal carpet to go all the way to the World Series. And I think that, Dan Wilson's done a good job. I think that he's been a great motivator. And the fact that it's another thing that kind of makes this a storybook season is that Dan was a player on the last Mariners team that won the American League West, came back as a manager and won it, 24 years later. So it's, in all ways, it's like a Disney movie happening out there, in Emerald City. So, it's been fun to watch. It's fun to write about.
Yeah. Do you think there's any concerns, though? They're so hot right now and they're playing so well. You get one of those first 2 seeds, you're off for a week. I'm sure that's not their greatest motivation. They're not going to be they don't want to be in a wild card series if they don't want to. But it just kind of shows you the flaws of the baseball setup. Something that's supposed to be an advantage, a lot of times isn't an advantage.
I think in Seattle's case, it will be because their ace pitcher, Brian Wu, sat out his last start. He's had some problems with a pectoral strain. And you definitely want him, a 15-game winner, lined up as your game 1 starter, no matter what round it is in the playoffs. So for them, there is the advantage that the arms can rest. Because as you said, when their rotation is clicking, they've got a lot of talented starters, from Gilbert to Castillo to, of course, Wu. I mean, that's a solid 3 guys you can throw in a short series. At the same time, as the pitchers kind of struggled, and even the middle relief, even during this stretch, has had some rocky moments, the bats have always picked them up. And I think that the layoff for them, it's twofold, because, again, you don't want to cool down a team that's, blazing hot. But at the same time, they're doing this hard drive all the way to the end of the pennant chase at the end. Maybe it's a advantage on their part where they can, I guess, for lack of a better term, decompress and kind of, okay, we can slow down, we can take a breath now and get our battle plans ready for the postseason, which I believe, I honestly think they will be the American League representative in the World Series.
I mean, look, baseball is weird, right? Like there's no rhyme or reason to it sometimes, but if you wanted to check all the boxes you possibly could before October came, I mean, the Mariners would certainly check just about every box that you could. And a big one, of course, is the guy who's led the charge and has gotten all the attention, Cal Raleigh. He's been a good player for a long part of his career, but this year has taken it to obviously a completely different level. What do you think has been the change for him this year?
I think obviously the focus is there. He seems like he's swinging, just free swinging. I'm one of those people who's not big into the the velo and a lot of the really statisticky stuff that we got to have this certain launch angle and things like that. I think he's just going out and hitting and doing what comes natural to him. And I think the Cal Raleigh story, whether he wins the most valuable player or Aaron Judge gets it, it's almost fitting. And I wrote this yesterday that when he hit his 60th home run, it was on the same night that Judge hit his 50th. But his home run was so much more important in the game. And I said, at that point, I almost felt like it was the natural, like you're going to see the explosives and the lights blowing up and everything, because, it's his story is sort of a Roy Hobbs kind of story. He was a guy that was known, he'd established himself in baseball, but not at this level. And I think to see this year, he's a feel-good story. I think Kyle Schwarber over in the National League, same type of situation. It's a guy that people respected for a long time because of the way he handled himself and played the game, dealt with the public, the media. But these guys are having, out of their minds career years. And it's almost like you want to reward them with the MVP award because it's such a feel-good story. I think Cal Raleigh's the feel-good story of the year in the American League.
He is by far the best story. I don't know if that wins you the MVP, but he is the best story. No question about it. A lot of the focus on the Mariners has been about Raleigh, but this is, as we said, a complete team. Can you just kind of give us some of the other highlights of the offense this year? Because it's not just him carrying the load all by himself. There's a lot of other contributors in that lineup.
Well, you got to start in center field. I mean, the kid, Julio Rodriguez, who has signed a long-term deal to stay in Seattle. He wants to be a Mariner. I believe it's a 12-year deal. So he's going to be in his mid-30s. They have, unless he gets traded, he'll probably finish his career in Seattle. But that guy's the franchise player. I love what Cal Raleigh's doing this year, but it's J-Rod's team. Julio Rodriguez is, in my mind, one of the top 4 to 5 young players in the game right now. He's a speed, power, great defensive center fielder. The combination of he and Raleigh up the middle, you've got a platinum glove catcher, and a gold glove quality center fielder on defense, and they both hit. Arozarena is a veteran out in left field. He's been there, done that. He's been a part of winning teams in the past. You look around, Josh Naylor, who struggled a bit as well after being acquired. He's hitting now and playing first base. And again, it's just, you could literally go down the whole roster and name something that each one of these guys contributed to this amazing run at the end of the season. It's just they look stacked right now.
Yeah, I mean they're unbeatable. They haven't been beaten. That's why they look unbeatable. A couple of years ago, 2022, they make the playoffs. They win a playoff round. That was the first time they made the playoffs in a very long time. It was like 20 years since they made the playoffs. Before that, they have just a brutal ending in a series against the Astros, right? The first game, they're just about on the verge of winning. Alvarez hits that big home run. Game 3, it goes 18 innings. A lot of the same pieces are there. Do you think that serves as motivation, that experience, the fact that they have it from a couple of years ago? Does that pay a benefit to this year's team, or is that just distant memory now?
I will say it's definitely been beneficial for the fan base. It's been like an exorcism. I have heard from so many people, so many M's fans that have said that they're so glad that the Mariners buried Houston at the end of the season, knocked them basically all the way out of the playoffs. Yeah. And I mean, it's kind of like sweet revenge this year for Seattle to be able to charge late and kind of in a way where they got clipped previous years by Houston. They finally got their comeuppance. And that's another thing I think that's the mark of any team that finally takes that next step is they have to slay their dragons.
Yeah.
They have to go back out and beat all those teams that had held them down for so long to get that confidence to make the run that they're on right now. I mean, a lot of people talk about that in NBA terms, where it was like the Bulls had to beat the Pistons, or this team had to beat this to show they were championship caliber. I think, convincingly, the way that they, handled Houston at the end of the year, I think that was a message to the rest of the league that, hey, we're for real and we're coming for the pennant.
Yeah, it felt like a changing of the guard in the AL West, right? I mean, the Astros have had their run. It's been a very successful run, a couple of World Series titles, but it does feel like you look around that Astros team, it's not the same team anymore, right? Every team has a run, every team has a window, and it certainly feels like the window for the Mariners now is wide open.
Yeah, and of course, Houston, they had Jordan Alvarez ran into some injury issues as well. So it wasn't all Seattle that knocked Houston out. Houston's not played well against some of the other teams, besides, but the sweep by Seattle was just so convincing. And it was so, at that point, when I saw that, they're not going to be a wild card. They're going to win the division. And then when you're talking about home field, and I mean, the stars are lining up for Seattle this year. And depending on what happens over in the American League East, I mean, you're talking about them basically being the kingpins when the playoffs roll around. And I honestly, of all the years that I've watched Seattle baseball, and of course we know what happened to the team that won 116 games, to me, and the Mariners even kind of came out about this, a few of the players this week, and said, this is really for the fans. This is for them because they've suffered. 2001, that looked like a team that's going to be the first world champion. You mentioned being eliminated by Houston a few years ago. It's really gotten down to the fan base wants this so bad, and that's going to be the home field advantage. T-Mobile Park is going to be rocking for this team when the playoffs roll around.
So we mentioned that the Mariners are the only team that's never made a World Series. Do you think that it would be considered a success for the fan base, just simply making a World Series, or given everything that this team has going for it, do they have to go out there and now win it?
Well, Seattle, I will admit, because as I've learned from getting acquainted with a lot of their fans out there, it's a kind of a laid-back sports town. I mean, it's a laid-back town, period. But I think the city, the fans would be very happy to see them win their first pennant. But I think when you get to that point and you've been waiting this long, there's always going to be that percentage of the fan base that's just upset that you didn't finally finish the deal. I think, if anything, I'd rather see them fall short, of making the World Series. I'm one of those guys that as I write about a team, there's nothing better than writing about a winner. It's hard to write stories about
baseball every single day. It's a slog. When you get to May or June and this is going nowhere, it's tough to find those stories. I know.
Yeah, imagine covering the Rockies this year. By May.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, all kidding aside, though, I think the energy and the vibe behind the team, and it's very contagious. It's contagious in my writing, because I see the whole city kind of falling behind this club and saying, hey, we're going to win it all this year. And that's I think in any market like that, where they haven't got a whole bunch of banners hanging up, I'm from the St. Louis area. The Cardinals have all those World Series, obviously the Yankees, but Seattle's wall is just division titles. I think they hang the big one this year. I really do. And I think the Seattle fans deserve it.
Hey, Ryan, thanks for giving us a few minutes, and hopefully we get a chance to talk to you a little deeper into October when the Mariners are back in a deep playoff run and maybe even heading to the Fall Classic.
Thank you so much for having me.
Remember college? Well, now, college is over, and here comes your student loan debt. Is your private student loan debt keeping you up at night? You really need to talk to YRefi. YRefi refinances distressed or defaulted private student loans that others won't touch. They can save you thousands of dollars and get you a custom payment that you can afford. And they don't care what your credit score is. Don't let private student loan debt ruin your life. Call YRefi today.
All right, let's move on to the NFL. Week 4 already on the horizon, and I got 3 games for you, 2-1 in the picks last week, so let's see if we can keep it rolling here and stay above 500 for the season. First game I got, let's start at the end. We'll start with one of the Monday night games, the Dolphins and the Jets. Jets getting 2.5. I like the Jets in this game. Everything has gone wrong for the Jets, but they could have won a couple of these games. Could have won the Steelers game clearly. Could have won last week if they had a couple of plays here or there, and they're doing it with a backup quarterback and all that type of stuff. I feel like at 0-3, after some of the questions posed to Aaron Glenn this past week, and we rode the Jets last week, and we got the nice backdoor cover. Jets still have some very pronounced issues, especially on the defensive side of things. But that Dolphin performance against the Bills, it felt like they had squeezed every piece of juice they could out of the fruit. And it feels like this is going to be a letdown week, and the pressure from Miami is going to be back on. And again, it's a division game. I prefer it to be 3, but I'll take the Jets plus the 2.5. Next up, I'm going to go with the Falcons. Falcons coming off an absolutely horrendous performance last week against the Panthers. So generally, when you have a performance that bad, I like the team to bounce back. Now, they're giving up 2.5, but I'm going to ride with the Falcons. There's been so much focus on their offense and Michael Penix. It's early in the season, and he's a high draft pick and all those different things, but the fact that through 3 games, you're starting to hear already some of the Kirk Cousins talk is not good. You know, the reason why I had high hopes for the Falcons going into the season was because I thought that Penix is going to be the guy to grip it and rip it, right? Like throw passes down the field. That has not been the case. Everything has been short and underneath, and it's been an issue. And that was the issue. That's why they made the change when they did with Kirk Cousins. You thought that with Penix, they were going to have a higher floor than this, and that has not been the case so far. So I don't know if it's a make or break week for Michael Penix, because I think they want to avoid going. If you go back to Kirk Cousins at this point, basically you're writing off Michael Penix Jr. And I don't think they're ready to do that just yet, but they have to obviously be a whole lot better than they were a week ago. So give me the Falcons minus the 2.5. And then I guess one of the featured matchups of the weekend, Cowboys and Packers, everything with the Micah Parsons return to Dallas, everything else. Everybody in the world is going to be on Green Bay in this game. I've seen the line as high as 7.5. I would love it at 7.5. The latest I've seen is Cowboys plus 6.5. I think the Cowboy pride is going to be on the table in this one, much like with the Jets and their new head coach. Cowboys, I don't think they win the game clearly. The CeeDee Lamb injury is obviously a major component of this as well. But maybe the Packers aren't as good as we thought they were. Jordan Love has still got some issues. And if Jordan Love can't light up that Dallas secondary, then he's got some bigger issues than maybe I thought and we thought. But I think the Cowboys are going to come. And the fact that everybody in the world, like last week, everybody in the world was on the Rams, and they were right for 59 minutes and 45 seconds. When everybody's on one side, give me the other side. So give me the Cowboys plus the 6.5. And I would think by game time, that line will be at least 7. All right, that's going to do it for the podcast for today. If you have stayed with me for this long, please hit that subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening on. If it's YouTube, if it's Spotify, if it's Apple, anywhere you get your podcast, please hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And we will be back next week with a fresh edition of Gordon Damer on Sports.